And we are live. So, welcome to another episode, another tragic episode of Something Shitty This Way Comes, where we take a movie that should be 1,000 times better than it actually is, and we talk about it. Not for too long, because nobody wants to spend any of their time talking about shitty movies. But sometimes they do deserve a bit of acknowledgement for all the reasons that they went wrong, possibly, at least from my perspective, how they could have been better, and then to look at them and say, okay, at the same time that this movie was released, here was another movie that got the job done. Let me start off by saying that this is another movie in the Something Shitty subthread that I wanted to see it. I wanted to see it do well. I wanted this to be an enjoyable movie. I wanted it to be a really great movie. I wanted it to be the movie that I feel all horror fans deserve, especially fans of the werewolf. I thought this had the potential to be the epic werewolf movie that werewolf fans have been waiting for a very long time. And unfortunately, it wasn't. And I guess I'm going to start talking about it now.
He was a dairy farmer in Eads, Colorado. He had a little bitty farm with a wife and kids. He worked real hard from sun up to sundown and did a whole bunch. But he loved his land. But in this day and age, and the corporations are taking over the little farms, and the U.S. government's fucking everybody in the ass, he decided to grab his rifle on and make a stand.
So we're talking about 2010's The Wolfman, directed by Joe Johnston. And to show that I'm not a complete hater, just like Stoker's Dracula, this is a movie that I've owned on DVD. I didn't have it at the time of VHS. This came out after VHS. Unlike Stoker's Dracula, I owned Stoker's Dracula on VHS, then on DVD. I still own it on Blu-ray. Yeah, I've got this on Blu-ray. I think I did own it on DVD a long time ago. I've got an unrated director's cut here because I'm just hoping, and I only can watch it like once every 6 months, so I watched it again for the purposes of this, this show that, this would be the time that I find out that this is a good movie. I'm going to find the thing that makes this movie tick, that makes it work. And just like every other time that I've tried to do it, I get about halfway done and I'm like, this movie sucks. And I'm so pissed off that I just put it away. Well, most of the time I do. This time I actually watched it for the purposes of the show so that I could at least have, a modern, informed, a current opinion on it. So this movie is directed by Joe Johnston. And Joe Johnston, although he's not, the hugest name in Hollywood, is a competent director. Joe Johnston directed Captain America, the First Avenger. So that's a solid movie. He directed one of my favorite movies. And if 85% of the things I'm doing, if I'm doing them and this movie comes on, I'll stop that 85%. And watch this movie. I'm talking about Hidalgo with Viggo Mortensen. I love Hidalgo. I think it's just a fantastic movie. He also directed Jurassic Park 3, which is a passable part of the trilogy. Not my favorite of the three, but it's a pretty good movie. So Joe Johnston is, a smart director. We've got Eric. Eric's in the house, and here we go. That's right, brother. It's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it, man. Somebody's got to get out here and be the 10th man, so to speak. If 9 people are saying one thing, it's the 10th. It's like that line from Munich, where he says it's the 10th man's job to disagree. So, there were a number of other directors that were tossed around to direct this. James Mangold was given the job, or was talked about. Frank Darabont, Mark Romanek. There were a number of, good directors who were, possibly going to helm this, and ended up going to Joe Johnston, which I'll get into in a little bit. But, potentially, this movie has everything going for it. You have a stellar cast. You have Benicio del Toro. I am an enormous Benicio del Toro fan. I can't even remember. Maybe the first time I saw him was The Usual Suspects, or before that, he was in another movie where he had a very small supporting role, a movie called Fearless with Jeff Bridges and Rosie Perez, and he played Rosie Perez's husband, and it's about survivors of a plane crash. So I've been a fan of Benicio del Toro for more than 20 years. You've got Sir Anthony Hopkins. I have my opinions about Anthony Hopkins in this movie, but overall, I love watching Anthony Hopkins. I would watch Anthony Hopkins play this water bottle. And I think I was saying something similar to Eric. There are just some actors, when you see them, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to watch. And when you put Anthony Hopkins, Benicio del Toro, let's see, we've got Emily Blunt. Emily Blunt is just another fantastic performer. She's wonderful. I watch her. I love watching her all the time, although I haven't watched that Mary Poppins bullshit. But she's just great. And we know that Benicio del Toro and Emily Blunt can work well together and have great chemistry. Because we saw it about 6 years later in a fantastic movie called Sicario. So I know for a fact that these two can work together and kick a lot of ass. They weren't doing it here. And you've also got Hugo Weaving. I love Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving. Smith from The Matrix. V for Vendetta. Captain America. The First Avenger. He's the Red Skull. Hugo Weaving is you've got 4 tier 1 performers here doing a classic horror story that no one has touched in 60 years. So this is pristine, untouched virgin territory, and it's a mess. It's a mess. Hold on, we've got some more comments here in the house. Eric, he also directed The Rocketeer. That's right. Everybody liked The Rocketeer as a kid. It's a good movie. Benicio in Sin City. Just fantastic performers. And you've got 4, an all-star cast with I would argue a top-tier director. And somehow they've mucked the whole thing up. You've got a great setting. You're back on the English moor. How difficult because Landis hit the English moor in 1981 with American Werewolf, which we found out was a fantastic place to have a werewolf movie. Then 30 years later, here we are again on the moors one more time in a permanent setting. This isn't 15 minutes on the moors and then we go directly into London. This is the entirety or the vast majority of the movie on this creepy English moor. So you've got the setting, you've got the performers, you've got I would argue, reasonably competent direction. So where does it fall apart? I have to argue the script. The script is just it makes absolutely no sense. Hold on a second. Oh, John is here. John's in the house. Hugo's in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, he's Lord Elrond. He's Lord Elrond. Who doesn't love Hugo Weaving? So, I mean, you've got everything. You've got all the potential in the world to hit this ball out of the park. And it's like watching somebody, just go down with 3 strikes. 1, woof, woof, 3. And it's over with. Retired the side. I don't get it. Now, in the director's cut, and if anybody's seen this, and I actually I own the director's cut, like I was just saying, but for some reason I have a purchased copy on Amazon, and that's the copy that I ended up watching. There's a bit of a treat in there in the very beginning. There's a cameo appearance by Max von Sydow. And Max von Sydow at this age in 2010, I think, was 81 years old. But he's Max von Sydow, so, I mean, how do you complain about, seeing such a kingly performer riding in the wagon with Benicio del Toro, attempting to give him his stick because he's an old man, and he's said, if you're going to be on the moor, you need a good walking stick, a gentleman. And he tries to hand him this it's this 5-minute little vignette scene, but it's very beautiful. You're happy to see Max von Sydow, and you're happy to see Benicio del Toro interacting with him. Benicio del Toro refuses the walking stick, and just sort of goes back to sleep in the wagon, and that's kind of the end of the scene. And the end of Max von Sydow's appearance. However, he does leave the walking stick there when Benicio del Toro wakes up. Max von Sydow is gone, and the walking stick is there. Now, there's a little bit of an Easter egg in there with Max von Sydow, and he says that he picked it up many years ago from Gévaudan, where there is a famous horror story about the beast of Gévaudan, where apparently wild animals or something in this part of Europe killed, I think, something upwards of like 40 people or something like that. And so there were rumors of, lycanthropy and werewolves and that sort of thing. This was centuries ago. But it was, there are some small things in here that actually do work in spite of just such a bad story. It's a bad story. It's very similar to Stoker's Dracula that way. You've got people, I think, who want to do well, but you can't elevate past the story that just doesn't make any sense. Max von Sydow is always great. Such a presence the man had. Definitely be missed. You can't get enough Max von Sydow. It's been 40 at that point. It'd been 40 years since The Exorcist. He's royalty. Always great. Just fantastic stuff. So there's a quick little vignette scene where he's in there, and if you have a chance, check it out. At least that particular scene. Now, here's where the trouble starts coming into Paradise. And again, it's very ironic that the things that should work for this movie are things that just on the other hand, it's very ironic that make the story just fall apart. You have Anthony Hopkins. Now, in the story, Benicio del Toro is an actor. He's Lawrence Talbot. He's on the stage in London, I think, and he is visited by Emily Blunt, who's the fiance of his brother who has gone missing on the moor. And she requests, although she's never met him before, to come back and assist in the search for his brother, her fiance. So he comes back to the moor, has the conversation with Max von Sydow, and then what ends up happening? It turns out his father is Anthony Hopkins. Now, I'm not going to go through this sequence with Anthony Hopkins is a werewolf. That's what you find out. Anthony Hopkins at this point is also 73 years old. And Anthony Hopkins is this werewolf who apparently has been a werewolf for like 30 years. I think before his children were born or something like that. And somehow you're supposed to believe that Anthony Hopkins has been successfully locking himself in the cellar of this small little village with one local lord who's Anthony Hopkins. He's Sir John Talbot. And no one for the past 3 decades has noticed anything weird about the fact that, he's a werewolf. He's locking himself in. Yeah, it's completely gone over everybody's head. You're just automatically supposed to suspect that. Not to mention the fact that Anthony Hopkins, I love Anthony Hopkins. It's been 30 years since Silence of the Lambs by the time this movie was made, or right along those lines. He has some great drama credits to his name. One of my favorites is an old classic, 84 Charing Cross Road, where he's just a bookstore manager in the post-World War II setting, which is based on a famous true story book, nonfiction book, which is a book of letters that are exchanged. So he has Anthony Hopkins. I have a lot of Anthony Hopkins in my video collection. One of my favorite movies came out around the time that this did, maybe a little bit before this, called The World's Fastest Indian, where he plays Burt Munro. So Anthony Hopkins is not past the point where he can no longer perform. He's Anthony Hopkins. What makes no sense is to have a 73-year-old man play a werewolf. And I hope that doesn't sound terrible, but it doesn't work. At least the way that it's done with this particular story, it doesn't work. And especially when you get to the reveal of, what the monster looks like. He looks like some sort of rabid orangutan. There's an over dependence on CGI here. You've got Rick Baker as a makeup artist, but somehow I think with Joe Johnston, there was a rush by the movie executives, to finish this movie in 80 days. And so Rick Baker really didn't get to get his hands on or his hands in the mud, like he wanted to. So there's dependence on CGI for the transformations. They're very weak. Anthony Hopkins is just too old to play a werewolf. I was doing a show last night with Eric, and we were talking about First Blood, which is a fantastic movie. 40 years later, we're coming up on 40 years of First Blood, and it still holds up. This movie is 10 years old, and I can barely stand to watch half of it at a time. And I was saying that at the time that this movie came, maybe it wasn't this movie though. Maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was by the time Anthony Hopkins had made that Possession movie, The Right. I think it was Bill Maher, who I'm not necessarily a fan of, but Bill Maher said Anthony Hopkins is just too old to play these sort of action horror kind of roles. He's like anybody that could, take 2 steps, take stairs 2 at a time, can get away from him. So suspension of disbelief has kind of been, has not been achieved here. It's just a bit of a bridge too far for Anthony Hopkins to be playing a werewolf. He ends up he's the one who killed Benicio del Toro's brother. And there's Benicio. And that's the shitty part about it. Benicio del Toro looks like a werewolf. You want this to work. You want this to work. You want it to be a successful movie, but it's not scary. I can't say that there's anything going on in this movie at any time really that is scary. The CGI is not that great. You're looking at some sort of animation or computer generated, crap, or whatever you'd want to call it. Hold on, we got some more comments here. Hopkins did a really good psychological thriller called Magic. Came out in 1978. Yeah, he's been around for a long time, man. He's been around for a long time. Nothing against Sir Anthony Hopkins. This is just a bad use of his abilities. I think I did a similar comparison when we talked about Attack of the Clones, and we were talking about this yesterday about how badly they used Sir Christopher Lee in that movie. I mean, it's not a good use of his talents. He looks like a Beast from he does. He looks like Beast from X-Men. I forgot it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Why hire Rick Baker if you're just going to slander? That's the ironic thing. Rick Baker won the Academy Award for special effects in this movie, but it could have been so much better. Like, sure, you can say the Wolfman won the Academy Award for special effects, and yet at the same time, I could show you this and say that doesn't make any damn sense. It just doesn't. Like, that's not scary. It just looks silly, and it's a 73-year-old man on top of it, and you're just, yeah. I mean, now here's, and I know Joe Johnston. I didn't write this script, but we were talking about this last night. For me, in my opinion, here's the best way to use someone like Sir Anthony Hopkins in a story like this. You don't make him the werewolf. You make him much more like the Claude Rains character in Chaney's movie, where he's the stiff upper-lipped British gentleman who's just not going to accept that his son thinks he's a monster. The kind of man who actually in this movie, he's a stiff upper lip gentleman. He's the English gentleman, the British gentleman. It's ridiculous, and he's just very dismissive of all Chaney's claims. And he ends up like strapping Chaney into a chair in his living room to say, I'm going to make sure that you see that you're not going to become this thing. That stoic, person in denial of what his son is claiming, something that requires some acting ability. That, in my opinion, would have been a much better use of Sir Anthony Hopkins' abilities. Much better. Instead, he's wearing, as we get closer to the moon, he's got this eye makeup on, because, I guess he's getting wolfier as we get closer to the full moon. Sometimes he has, lines, and then sometimes he doesn't, where he's just kind of staring at Emily Blunt, on the stairs, and she's trying to talk to him, but, he's just not, having any conversation. And, again, you've got the wonderful Emily Blunt as the love interest. It's a little weird because she was engaged to his brother, but to Del Toro's brother. But then by the end of the movie, she's in love with him. So that's a little weird too. It's just it's not a good story. There's no chemistry between Benicio del Toro, really. There's a little bit of chemistry maybe between Del Toro and Anthony Hopkins. I'm not getting much, though, and I'm not getting much chemistry between Emily Blunt and anybody. Del Toro, the chemistry is not good. It's just, it's apparently there are tons of alternate versions. They can't seem to have decided on what was the best version for release. It's just, it's not good. It's not good. And you can sense how disconnected it is, the lack of chemistry. Like I said, you've got a great setting on the moor, but they're not using it. It's not scary. There's this entire long sequence where Del Toro's in the house, healing from the werewolf bite. So they're not making use of the moor. It's not great. Hold on, John's here. The werewolf has to look real. Yeah. And you can tell that this is a CGI werewolf. There's something in your brain that just kind of triggers, and you can see that this. Now, in this movie's defense, or in Rick Baker's defense, or in Del Toro's defense, the actual werewolf that Rick Baker designs is actually a fairly decent monster. I thought that, in those scenes where he's in the asylum and he's transforming in front of everybody, I thought that was a passable werewolf. Unfortunately, it's used only in limited scenes. before they switch over, like by the time he gets up on the rooftop, then they switch over to CGI, or he's running through the streets, or when he first transforms and he's running through the moor and he's killing all the villagers. There's just an over-reliance on CGI, and, the scenes are moving too quickly. It's very disappointing. It's disappointing. If the Wolfman won the Oscar for SFX, the other choice had to be far, far worse. Well, it wasn't the Wolfman, it was Rick Baker. So I guess they're separating the standalone scenes where Del Toro was acting as the Wolfman. It wasn't the Wolfman necessarily, although it was Rick Baker for the Wolfman. I guess they're separating that from the the overall, CGI. He's getting wolfier. It has to be on a t-shirt. Yeah. My birthday's coming up in November. Maybe I'll get one for everybody for the podcast who's on the set. The movie was, it was two-dimensional. You want it to do well, but it's just, there's nothing to grab onto. That's not necessarily true, though. There is one thing that I really enjoyed, and that was Hugo Weaving. Hugo Weaving is kind of the bright spot in this movie, in my opinion, because he comes in as Inspector Francis Aberline. And I was just talking about Aberline last week when I covered From Hell. Francis Aberline is the real name of a detective who was in charge of the Ripper murders in Whitechapel, in the late 19th century in London. And of course, they never solved the case. And, he was played by Johnny Depp in From Hell, the Hughes Brothers movie. But here it's Hugo Weaving, post-Ripper, fully acknowledging that he was involved in that case. And now he's on the moor trying to solve these murders, as that character. And I just thought that was great. I thought that was very cool that they were bringing like a real-life detective onto the moor to solve the movie, played by Hugo Weaving. I love Hugo Weaving. That was a bright spot. He's got some great lines in there, some sarcasm when he's talking to the villagers in the pub, and that one lady who's a widow. That's probably that, and the Max von Sydow scene are two of the bright spots. Maybe the only two bright spots for me personally in this movie. It's not good. There's a ridiculous fight at the end between the werewolf, versus the Wolfman. I think that's how they categorized it. It's the werewolf, which is Anthony Hopkins, versus the Wolfman, which is Benicio del Toro. And it's just, it's like Attack of the Clones with Christopher Lee jumping around like Spider-Man. You've got Anthony Hopkins jumping around all over the place. It's bad. And you feel a little bad because these are quality performers and they must know that this movie is not up to snuff. And again, you have performers like Emily Blunt, who clearly, with the proper script, can demonstrate a great deal of chemistry, because we came back 6 years later to see a fantastic movie that still blows me away to this day, called Sicario. So clearly, with the proper script, I believe that, this could have been a fantastic movie, much less reliance on CGI. Take away the whole Anthony Hopkins as a werewolf kind of thing. The only reason that they made the father, I feel like, they did it specifically because it's Anthony Hopkins. And now, that's Anthony Hopkins related to his history with horror movies, going back now to Hannibal Lecter, rather than saying, wow, we've got one of the best actors alive here. We really need to create a story that puts his best foot forward. Again, I think something much closer to a Claude Rains kind of performance as the British Gentleman would have been far better use of his talents, rather than, watching him, over the course of a week have his eyebrows get bushier and, trying to say, that's a good use of Anthony Hopkins. Not good. You can't blame Baker for their decision to use CGI. Yeah, I don't blame Baker at all. I'm sure he must have been very frustrated. And, like we were talking about yesterday, he has a great deal of experience working with, werewolves. Rick Baker knows how to make a werewolf. And it doesn't seem like the executives let him. Love Hugo Weaving in V for Vendetta. His niece Samara is pretty good as well. Really enjoyed her in Ready or Not. I haven't seen that, but okay, maybe I'll take a look. Now, unfortunately, even Inspector Aberline, falls prey to the bullshit because he ends up getting bit. And you're like, oh God, why are they doing this? Like, why? Why would you do something like that? Like bite at like a real life character. Suddenly you're going to say that now he's a werewolf too, and that's kind of how the movie ends. What I thought would have been a much better ending would have been because, of course, the werewolf can only be released by somebody he loves, in this particular, storyline. So, he's shot by Emily Blunt. Benicio del Toro is shot after Benicio del Toro kills his father. He's shot by Emily Blunt. But what I thought would have been a superior ending would have been also if she had shot Hugo Weaving, like right there on the spot, like right there in front of all of his police colleagues on the moor, hunting this werewolf after she sees that he's been bitten. If she would have just shot him, that would have been a good ending. But we don't get that. We get Benicio del Toro is dead, and Hugo Weaving is, I guess, going to become the Wolfman now or something like that, and some bullshit. So I've spent 32 minutes now talking about this movie. Even in verbalizing it, it hasn't gotten any better. However, part of what we do here at Something Shitty This Way Comes is we offer an alternate film for your viewing, whatever, that we think, or that I think that you should check out, that came out the same year and is just a much better investment for your time. And for me, I started to pull a different movie. I started to select this movie, Devil, which is about these people that are trapped in an elevator. 4 people. I mean, just solid performances, no setting. The entire movie takes place in an elevator. The vast majority of the movie takes place in an elevator. These 5 or 4 people are trapped in an elevator, and one of them is the devil. That's a fantastic movie. Those are solid performances. That is, no big budgets, no big name actors. You don't have this tidal wave of A-list actors, big directors. You just have solid performances, solid direction, really good storyline that just makes for a very enjoyable movie. That was going to be my selection. What I ended up going with, though, is this. Stakeland. I was looking through movies that were released in 2010, and I came up with Devil, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then I just kept scrolling through the images that came up on Google, and I realized that Stakeland was out there. This is a fucking horror movie. This is a no bullshit, unpretentious, maybe a 90-minute movie, something like that, maybe a little bit more, with no name actors. Actually, there's one name performer in here, Kelly McGillis. If you remember Kelly McGillis from Top Gun, she was Tom Cruise's love interest in Top Gun, and then you never saw her again, makes a return in this movie, which is a fucker of a movie. This is a film about a vampire apocalypse that is occurring throughout the world. And it's about this man who sort of takes this young boy, saves him from a vampire attack after his entire family is just wiped out one night during the apocalypse, and sort of takes him under his wing to keep him alive and to train him how to do the job of killing vampires. This is a phenomenal movie. I love this movie. And there are no huge budgets. It's probably, certainly no Anthony Hopkins, no Benicio del Toro, no Emily Blunt. There's a couple of people that you might recognize from other roles. The one guy who plays the Colonel from HBO's Generation Kill is in it. He's got a small role, but there are no name people in this. And this movie just kicks fucking ass. As far as I'm concerned, the Wolfman can just go away and I can sit down and watch Stakeland. And now that I've actually started to talk about it, I think as soon as I sign off here, I just went out for a run, so I'm a little smelly right now. But I think I'm going to grab a shower and then stretch out on the couch and watch some fucking Stakeland because that is a fucking horror movie. And that's a movie that's worth every minute of your time. Hold on. We've got a few more comments here. Devil is really good. Yeah, it is. Yeah, love Stakeland. Stakeland is a serious fucking movie. And I own it on DVD. It's one of those movies where sometimes it's on the streaming channels, but it's one of those movies that not a lot of people know about. And it's just, you're like, how the fuck do you not know about this movie? This is pristine fucking horror, man. I mean, this is a movie that's worth your time. Yeah, this is exactly what I was just saying. Never seen Stakeland. Gotta change it, bro. Gotta change it. Find a copy on Amazon. This is not a streamer movie, although if it's on the streaming services or whatever you have access to, then watch it. But this is a purchase. I guarantee you, this is a fucking purchase. I own this on DVD, and I'm definitely going to be watching it. And we need to cover this on the show. This is another movie. And that's the funny thing. And I was just saying this to some friends earlier. There are a lot of modern movies out there these days that people just don't know about. They're caught up in the old classics or the old shitty movies. They're caught up in the reboots. They're caught up in the sequels. And they're missing all this fresh fucking blood that's, wanting to course through the fucking veins because they're stuck, with, the only reason look at it this way. It took me 30 minutes of talking about the Wolfman to get to this. And we will be getting to Stakeland on American Werewolf in New Jersey. But, you'd be surprised how many people don't know about it. Other movies that I've, when I pulled out Ravenous, not many people know about it. And when I pulled out A Dark Song, not many people know about it. There are just so many flicks out there that I'm thinking off the top of my head that are just so good that, people just haven't heard of them. But that is a movie that is worth your time and a much better use of resources with a limited budget. You don't need a big budget. You don't need 4 A-list stars to make a good fucking movie. So that I think that is. Hold on a second. Tubi has Stakeland 1 and 2 streaming. Yeah, dude, put it at the front of the queue. Fuck anything else that you're watching. I'm completely serious. Watch that tonight or tomorrow or something. Put that at the front of the queue. If you come back to me and you say that I didn't put it at the front of the queue, I'd be curious as to say, unless, the wife was laying down the law or something. But if you say that I didn't put it at the front of the queue, I'd be curious as to what you put in front of Stakeland. Now, Stakeland 2 is a solid movie. It's not I would say it's not as good as the first one, but it's still a solid fucking movie. I got to get Stakeland 2. I don't even know why. Yeah. But if you don't put it at the front, tell me, DM me or something like that, and tell me what it is that you put in front of it. Because after you watch Stakeland, I'd say there's a 95% chance you're going to say, fuck, I should have just got to this first. Fresh fucking blood has to be on a T-shirt. Yeah, we need some. That's what we need, man. Maybe we need some. You and I are going to have to talk about that. We're going to have to talk about that. Definitely going to watch it tomorrow or Saturday night. Trust me. Yeah, wife gets control of the TV tonight. Yeah, man. I mean, sometimes you can only do what you can do. So, we all gotta compromise, and we gotta sleep at night. So, without worried about having a pillow stuffed over our face. So, all right. That's my review of the Wolfman. Don't fucking bother. Basically, that's the summary. Fresh fucking blood. Instead, get yourself out there and watch some fucking Steakland, because that's some serious shit. That's what a movie is supposed to be. We'll be back next week. I'm not going to talk about with what just yet, because we're working on a couple things, but we'll be back in the live stream with episodes. Thanks to Eric, as always, friend of the show, and John. John will be back with us next week, doing some episodes, and all the best, everybody. And don't waste your time with bullshit. Have a good night.
You taste what you want from me. You taste all of the gristle from the bones I need to stand up to you, to live up to food is too troubling. Can't take what you like from me. Can't take all of the vision that your money leaves. Don't be careless now. Just create debate and good covering. You can't